back foot. Kamala Harris surging in the polls. What is the message? How is the messaging for Donald Trump? 2, Q&A with the Willitia. Your questions, my answers here on The Will Cain Show. And 3, Kamala Harris versus Kamala Harris. Let's see if we can set up a debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and the presidential candidate Kamala Harris on The Will Cain Show. It is The Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Always on demand at Apple or Spotify. Just hit subscribe. Join us every Monday through Thursday live at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Hit subscribe on YouTube. You'll get the reminder. Set the reminder. Jump into the comments section. Become a part of the community and hang out with us here on The Will Cain Show. I got a busy week. You can join me tonight as I fill in for Jesse Waters on Jesse Waters Prime Time on the Fox News channel. And a little bit later this week, I'll be sitting in on Fox and Friends Thursday and Friday. It's a busy week here on the Will Cain Show, so let's get right to it with story number 1. What is the message? Why is he on his back foot? What's going on with Donald Trump? Let's break it all down with columnist for Outkick, frequent fill-in host here at the Will Cain Show. It's Bobby Burack. What's up, Bobby?
Will, happy to be here.
It's interesting, when I don't know, just go out around in the world, Bobby. When you talk to people who are conservative or Republican or to one varying degree or another supporters of Donald Trump, man, I'm picking up a level of pessimism. I'm picking up some real concern out there of people out there about the surge of Kamala Harris, the enthusiasm around Kamala Harris, but not only that, the reaction of Donald Trump to this surge for Kamala.
Yeah, I'm with you totally. You and I both live in somewhat rural areas. I think you do at least. And I always try to judge not what I see just online in the media, but also talking to real, normal people. I live in Michigan, one of the most crucial battleground states. And I'm with you. I've spoken to a lot of people out at bars and restaurants and out and about over the past 2 weeks. And the people who want Donald Trump to win, they're not very confident. And it's not just in the sense of like it was before, where it's like, well, we don't really trust voters. There's a real sense that Donald Trump is fumbling this race, fumbling this campaign. And that's a pretty stark contrast from even 4 years ago when, even though the polls weren't in his favor, there was still a lot of optimism. Well, maybe they don't matter. Maybe this is 2016 all over again. I don't get that same sense right now.
Yeah, 1 month ago, there was, I think, a strong and growing sense of confidence that Donald Trump would beat Joe Biden. And if there was any pessimism or caveat to that optimism, it was, well, you never know what's going to happen in an election. Yeah. You never know, based upon 2021, that you can trust the process of the election. And then after the assassination attempt of Donald Trump, I mean, it was like going to be over. Everyone was like, this is done. Donald Trump is going to win the race for the presidency in 2024. And I don't know if it's changed 180 degrees, but it has swung hard the other way in a short amount of time. And it's interesting as to why. I mean, there's a lot of manipulation going on still. I mean, I think that the enthusiasm for Kamala Harris is completely astroturfed. I say completely. I think there is some genuine enthusiasm on the left for people who were just done with Joe Biden because it was obvious that he is decrepit and senile and incapable. And now you have somebody with, a pulse as their candidate for president. And that is going to generate some level of genuine enthusiasm. But the press has granted her an outsized honeymoon period that has, I think, inflated her numbers as well. But I don't think we can ignore what you're talking about as well. It's this idea that Donald Trump has not responded well to this enthusiasm for Kamala Harris, and perhaps most notably, like attacking people like Joe Rogan. It's just not a smart move.
Yeah, so there's 2 points here. I want to start with the Kamala one. So when I filled in for you the day after Joe Biden announced he wasn't running, and I talked to the crew, Patrick, Will, and James, about this analogy that I really feared. I called it the new coach phenomenon. What happens in the NFL when a coach is fired? Usually that team wins the next week, even if they're inferior. What happens is the team, the players, the fan base, they rally behind the new coach simply for not being the old coach. And that's what I thought would happen with Kamala Harris. And unfortunately, it really has. I think Democrats are just so happy that she's not Joe Biden, that she's still on the honeymoon. She's still the new coach, the new savior. So I'm not that surprised to see the rejuvenation of the party. But on the other side, the Trump part is fascinating because he has operated since she's taken over as somebody who's really desperate, somebody who doesn't have a lot of winning messages to spread. Well, that's not true. In a lot of ways, Donald Trump has more than enough talking points. The border, crime, cost of living, economy, Kamala Harris subverting the primary process, being too radical. But while he's done that some, he keeps distracting from his own messages by delving into some really dumb areas. Going after Joe Rogan for simply saying he likes RFK as a person, I don't see how that helps Trump. Questioning if Kamala Harris is black, get what he was doing, but I think that helps her more than it helps him. Crowd size, MLK, tweeting out that picture, that AI picture that wasn't accurate. I just don't think he's helping himself. He's giving the other side a lot of ammunition to say, hey, look, he's the kooky one. He's the one that's not fit for office. And he doesn't need to do that.
It's really odd as well. You know, I've been around Donald Trump on several occasions, and he's not just, I mean, I would say charming. Is that the word I'm looking for? I mean, he definitely, yes, he will charm you.
Yeah.
And it comes from even a level of confidence. Like, it's the kind of confidence. It's hard for me to explain this because when you do an interview with Donald Trump, he talks about himself. I mean, but that's the nature of the interview. He is the subject of the interview, so he's going to. But the minute the interview's over, it's not actually all about himself, right? And even in your social life, in your personal life, there are times when you interact with people and they don't ask anything about you. It happens a lot, and it's really interesting. And I think it's probably coming from a place of insecurity. Like, the more people feel insecure, they feel the need to talk about themselves. And confident people show, if you want to be interesting, be interested. And he's interested in other people and how they're doing and how they're feeling. And you see this, there are viral videos you can see on social media of him interacting with crowds, like going up, signing pictures, signing baseballs, talking. And it's incredibly winning. It's incredibly winning. And it's coming from a place of confidence. I don't know. It's like his Truth Social feed. Moments, I mean, he'll give an hour and a half rally, so it's just moments in the rally. But I'll be real. The day my wife was like, why does he have to call people names? Like, I walked in, she was listening. It was rolling on YouTube after the Will Cain Show. And that whole thing of like calling people names or any of the number of stories you just ran through is running cross current with what you and I were just describing about his ability to win from a place of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's go back to pre-debate in June. I put out an electoral map. I might have even discussed it on the show. And I had Donald Trump winning very slightly. I think it was Pennsylvania deciding it. So he had like 283 and Biden had like 259 or something. And most people, I thought at that time, agreed that the election was close, but Donald Trump was a slight favorite. Then the debate happened, and it really shifted. You saw Nate Silver put out his model, giving Trump about a 65-68% chance of winning. This is post-debate. And then someone tried to murder him on that Saturday, and then it seemed like the race was over. Then you had the really 3 positive days at the RNC, and it felt like this was inevitable. Donald Trump was going to win the presidency. Then he had that speech. Started out really well. Then it didn't. He seemed meandering, a bit tired, monotone, lacking energy. And a couple days later, Joe Biden dropped out. Now, all of a sudden, we're even beyond pre-debate where it seems like Kamala Harris is the favorite. Most polls give her a slight edge. So this election, by any means, is not over. Donald Trump can still come back. Who knows? Maybe the poll is off slightly. But momentum is not on his side right now. And eventually he has to turn that around because, look, don't factor in the hardcore Trump supporters. They've been mad at me all week. They love him no matter what. But you don't win general elections by just catering to your strongest supporters. You have to usually gain support from some moderates in battleground states. And he's not doing that right now. And the media's a part of it as well. Maybe we'll get to that in a moment about what they're doing. But Donald Trump doesn't have much momentum right now, and he's not helping himself. We'll see what happens in the coming weeks here. Maybe he will turn it around and put out a more positive message. But his messaging right now, by all polls, say it's not working.
We should say, as you said, I think you wanted to get to this, there are these cross currents of what he's doing to his own messaging. But
yeah,
the reason that the lift is so heavy for him is because of the role of the media in ensuring it's always a negative picture for him and a positive picture for Kamala Harris. So, I mean, you can't use it as an excuse because at some point it is what it is, and you've got to control your own messaging and do the best version you can. But I think you're the one who said this, like, he's not running against Kamala Harris. He's running against the entirety of an establishment that includes the biggest megaphones in media.
Yeah, he's running against a media-created character that they've essentially cast Kamala Harris to play. So you have to sit back, and I'm writing a column on this right now, and I'm really fascinated by the topic. So 2 months ago, Kamala Harris was a notoriously unpopular DA, district attorney. She had the lowest approval rating for a vice president ever. She was deemed so unelectable that every conversation about replacing Joe Biden for the past 4 years has surrounded mostly Michelle Obama and Gavin Newsom, sometimes Gretchen Whitmer. Kamala Harris was viewed as so unpopular that she could never win a general election. Well, how all of a sudden does she go from that to this cultural figure of joy that the pollers seem to be very confident in can win this election?
Right.
Well, the answer is pretty simple. People are buying in to the role she's been cast to play. They are buying into what the media is selling. Now, this is what surprises me some. So we've seen polling for the past 3 years to say that only 17% of the country trust the legacy media. The legacy media, lied about Russia, lied about COVID, the vaccine, mandates, Biden's cognitive state. They lie about everything. And America seemed to be realizing, okay, we can't trust these people. Yet the numbers say Americans are falling for the same people who have deceived them for much of the past 8 years. I can't quite make sense of that.
So here's how I make sense of that, and we'll leave it here. But yeah, I think the vast majority of people, like you just suggest in that poll, whatever it was, 83% don't trust the media. You said only 17% do. But they still, it's like they have the ability to set the course of the river, even if you don't trust the direction of the river. Everyone's floating along on the river. Yeah. So, if CNN tells you a certain thing, you're not necessarily going to believe them. But it creates an atmosphere of acceptable conversation. You see what I'm saying? So if CNN and in service of Democratic politicians call J.D. Vance weird, before you know it, people at your backyard party who don't take CNN as gospel start believing that J.D. Vance is weird, because it's like it sets the tone, the narrative, the direction. the course of the river, and everything else floats along. And I think that's still the power of CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS. I think that's still the power that they have. They don't have ratings. They don't have credibility and trust. But they still have, I guess, because of legacy, the ability to set the tone of the national conversation.
Yeah, and one other point, and I think we have a mailbag question about us. I don't want to go too deep into it yet, but the legacy media, we'll just call them left wing at this point. They are. Most people really can't deny it. CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, CBS, ABC, et cetera, they're all in unison. They are spreading the exact same message. That's not the case in conservative media anymore. It's very fragmented. The big reason is there's not a clear face of conservative media anymore. But you have about 4 different groups all saying something different. And I think it's created some confusion, not just among voters, but I think GOP lawmakers, some people telling them, hey, you're doing everything right, and others saying you're doing everything wrong. I think the unity of the legacy media is far stronger than the conservative media at this point.
All right, we're here with Outkick columnist Bobby Burack, who's going to stick around as... Coming up, we will dive into a question and answer session, a mailbag with you, the Willitia, next on The Will Cain Show.
I'm Emily Campagno. This month, the Fox True Crime Podcast presents Crimes on Campus.
More pledges, more money, more colleges, until it was a multi-million-dollar drug network.
You'll be joining me on college and university campuses all across the country as I share chilling stories of scandal, corruption, and murder.
Brutalized 5 students over 3 nights.
New episodes available every Tuesday this month. Listen and follow at foxtruecrime.com.
Streaming now on Fox Nation, a new season of Duck Family Treasure.
It's treasure time.
The Robertsons are back.
Duck hunt, treasure hunt, finally go.
Tell the ducks we coming.
For their biggest,
you gotta cut a squirrel in half,
beeping season ever.
Go big or go home.
All new episodes.
Looking at what we find doesn't tell the story.
One unforgettable season.
When you see how we find it, it'll ignite the engine.
My hand is shaking.
A new season of Duck Family Treasure, streaming now on Fox Nation. Sign up at foxnation.com.
It's time to take the quiz. 5 questions, 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
History, pop culture, science, sports, civics. How much do you know? Let's find out.
Who was the first person to walk on the moon?
Jackson or something?
Neil Armstrong.
Take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox and then listen to the quiz podcast to find out how you did.
Play, share, and of course, listen to the quiz right now at thequiz.fox.
A conversation with you, the Willitia. Coming up here on the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, on the Fox News Facebook page, always on demand at Apple or Spotify. Just hit subscribe. We're still hanging out with Outkick.com columnist Bobby Burack here on the Will Cain Show. We also have the boys in the crew. We have Tinfoil Pat, Young Establishment James, and Two-A-Days Dan. As Bobby's going to take us through his mailbag, some questions from the audience, some questions from the Willitia. Take it away, Bobby.
Yeah, great questions as always. Always appreciate you sending them in once a month. So we start with Brian from North Carolina. How would you guys describe the current state of the election in terms of a football game, i.e., what quarter, who is winning, and by how many points? That's pretty fun.
We're in the third quarter, I feel like. I think we're in the third quarter. We're past.
Well, I think it's beginning
3 months to go. Yeah. I don't know if we're in the fourth quarter yet.
Okay.
I agree.
It feels like there's huge, crucial moments yet to come. I will say this. What was the score of Patriots Falcons? And what was it? It was 28-3. But how late was it 28-3 in that Super Bowl, James?
That was, I believe, third quarter with about 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. So you're at the point, I think, where you're cognizant of the amount of time that's left, but there's still a couple big drives to happen.
So Falcons were up 28-3 with only 2.5 minutes left in the third quarter.
Oh, I made so much
I'm going to tell you, if Trump loses this election, it's going to feel like that Super Bowl. I'm telling you right now. I mean,
big time.
After the assassination attempt, it was 28-3. I mean, up like that. I think we're in the third quarter. I think Kamala has started to show some momentum. I think that there is a lot of game left to play, but I think that's the analogy right now. Mid-third quarter, big lead from Trump, but you can feel something happening here. The game is not exactly like we thought it was going to go.
So I'm going to look at it a bit differently. I agree. Trump was up big at halftime, 3-possession lead. Right now, at the end of the third, heading into fourth, I'll say Kamala's up in one of those games where when you score a touchdown, the one team's up by 1, the other one's up by 2, where it's not quite a field goal game. So I'll say Kamala's up by about 1-2 points, but Trump can easily march down the field and get a field goal or a touchdown and take the lead immediately if he needs to.
No, this has that feel of a game to me, Dan. Dan, this has a feel of a game to me. It's not a seesaw back and forth game. It hasn't been. It's one where your team is winning the entire game, and yet it doesn't feel good. There's something wrong, and and clearly momentum has shifted. And it's one of those where you start feeling like, hey, if defense doesn't step up and get a stop here, then we may still be up by 10, but that 10 is all of a sudden nothing anymore. And I don't know. That's how I feel about this game. By the way, they benched their starting quarterback at halftime. They brought in the backup, and everything's different than from the first half.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's kind of like she joined the game like halfway through or something like that, or halfway through the second quarter. It's a little different.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about something that's a bit personal to me, which I don't like talking about. The Lions are up by 17 points at halftime in the NFC Championship game, right? And everybody said the only way they lose this game is if they do what the Lions do, which is self-destruct. I wonder if Donald Trump's going for too many fourth downs. Maybe instead of running it up the middle, he's throwing screen passes and getting hit behind the line. He reminds me a bit of Dan Campbell here, where he's too loose and he's not holding on to his lead or playing this conservatively. So I'm not liking him.
Saying. It's like he's playing like he's down, and you're like, hey, you're not down. You're up. Same thing with the Falcons-Patriots. Like, you don't have to keep throwing the ball. Run the ball and run the clock out. Don't go for it on fourth downs like the Lions. You're not down, you're up. But because you do that, you keep giving them extra opportunities that they didn't earn. It does now put you on now you're on your heels, even though you're still up on the scoreboard.
Was Joe Biden Mike McCarthy?
No.
As a Packer fan, I take offense.
Okay. I just thought I would ask. Not a mailbag question. That's a question for me. James, want to weigh in at all?
But I got something. Isn't it kind of like, when you play someone that's worse than you play down to that level a little bit? So it could be a little bit of that, You're not playing the highest talent, so you're not putting out your best work. You know what I'm saying? So he's playing down a little bit too.
I agree.
That.
It's a good analogy. All right, question number 2. We talked about a little bit in the previous segment. Hey guys, how does not having Rush Limbaugh for the first time since the 90s affect the election, particularly for the GOP? That comes from Sarah in Texas.
Rush Limbaugh. You and I, Bobby, a few months ago did a Mount Rushmore of conservative media, and there was no doubt about it that Rush Limbaugh was on the Mount Rushmore. He's probably the first round draft pick, right? He's the first one you'd carve into stone. But I got to be honest, I did not grow up listening to Rush, so I don't have the ability to project him into this cycle. I don't what role would he be playing? I don't really have that ability. You said it in our show a little bit earlier, there's no dominant voice in conservative media, and I think that's true. So where in the past maybe Tucker Carlson dominated in one election cycle or Bill O'Reilly in a few, there really isn't one voice that is setting the direction of conservative media. It's Donald Trump. He is the voice. right? Like more than any media figure, and he is a media figure with his own outlets. So, yeah, I don't know what role Rush would have played in this election that he played in the past.
Well, so I think what Rush did, and Donald Trump actually admitted this on a few occasions, Rush really set the agenda for not only conservative media, but the GOP. He was very influential. He talked to a lot of lawmakers and Republican presidents on the phone. He'd advised them. It's been well reported. I don't know to what degree. But here's what's really happened since Rush passed away. The media has become even more fragmented. So, for example, he dominated the media, conservative media, from 12 to 3. Well, what's happening now in just the 12 a.m. hour? It's broken down into all these different groups. This show, Clay and Buck, Dan Bongino, Dana Loesch, and all 5 of you have very different messages and compared to Rush, who just had that one message. So I think people are getting perspective from you, from Clay, from Bongino, and it's all very different. I think lawmakers see that, Trump campaign sees that. So there's some confusion about what's actually working because everybody's not just following in the lead of Rush. Now, I will say, I don't know that Rush had as much impact on the last election. Tucker Carlson was clearly that guy 4 years ago. So I think it's less about Rush than it is that person who sets the agenda for conservative media. I mean, just look at it like this. What you're hearing from Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, Mark Levin, Glenn Beck, Pete Hegseth, Will Cain, Clay Travis, it's all pretty different. You're not getting that on the other side. Rachel Maddow, Jake Tapper, they all sound exactly the same right now. And I think that helps Kamala Harris.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Really?
Well, like I know almost everybody you just named in conservative media. Yeah. Like, I don't know. When I think of all those people, I don't think, oh, we're all real different and have profound disagreements. We're different stylistically. We're different tonally. Maybe we're different even like personalities, you know? But like, I mean, there is some diversity within conservative media, and it's often about, do you think, you know, it's like, do you attack? Do you counterpunch? But almost everybody I know in conservative media has a set of principles that they adhere to or they believe in at a pretty deep level, you know, and I don't want to like belabor them, but like it's constitutional thought. It's a belief in individual freedom and negative rights. It's a belief in the value of tradition. For varying degrees, it's a reverence for the role of faith in one's life. And I don't think there's a huge degree of variance. And by the way, I don't think there needs to be one voice setting the agenda. I'm not sure that's necessary or a good thing. It's on the left, there is no one dominant voice. There's just a monolith of a entirety of an industry who all says the same thing in the same way. In I don't know, like we've talked about on numerous occasions, whether or not it's pandemic of the unvaccinated or saving democracy, it's just like a cultish chant, also called media. And that doesn't exist on the right. And so it's harder to get people to just fall in line with a certain simplified message. What's up, two-a-days?
So what about big voices like that are kind of down the middle, like a Bill Maher or Joe Rogan? What does that do for the landscape of media? Because they're not really one-sided or the other. They're kind of just down the middle, but still huge voices for people who are wanting to learn about all of this.
Yeah.
Bill Maher down the middle?
Ish.
Well, so it's a good point. And I wrote about this last week. It's true. Like, Trump went after Rogan. A lot of conservative influencers, I guess is what you call them, like Cat Turner went after Joe Rogan. But it's true that while Rogan is not part of the quote-unquote team, him criticizing liberals has more impact than Mark Levin doing it, because Mark Levin's audience is mostly conservatives. So they already probably don't like Kamala Harris. But Rogan doing it matters because some of his listeners probably like Kamala Harris. But I think here's where I'd push back. So we saw this last week. Tim Pool, with a huge YouTube audience, he's very adamant. He thinks Trump's in trouble. He thinks Trump is losing in the polls. But you have other conservative pundits who say, oh, it's all a lie. Trump is winning in the polls. I think that matters because I think Trump and his campaign are probably going to side with the ones that say, well, this is all nonsense. We're still winning. And that's been part of my issue with the way the Trump campaign has handled this. I don't know that they're really considering all factors of this. Like, they loved the polls when he was up by a lot against Biden. Now they don't believe in them. I don't think that's a smart strategy at all. So I think it does. Diversity in conservative media benefits in some ways, but I do think this fragmented landscape gives people a lot of false hope, and then some other people some really negative hope. And I just look how the liberal media gathered together to say, hey, Joe Biden's out, he needs to go. That mattered. I would love to see conservative media unify to tell Donald Trump, hey, what you're doing is not winning. Change this immediately. The side that's defending him, saying, oh, everything's going great, that's what annoys me.
So what you're talking about is messaging. So when I push back on you about, well, yeah, I mean, so Tim Pool's an interesting example because I don't know. I think he's libertarian-ish. I don't know what is, like, he probably has some pretty profound disagreements from whoever it is he's getting in a fight with on Twitter. I don't know who we're talking about, or me. He and I probably have some pretty profound disagreements at some policy or philosophical levels. I don't know. I think we might. I don't know. But what you're talking about is a fight between individuals on messaging, and that's about whether or not it's, your job is to accurately describe reality or not. And I think in that situation, Tim is trying to accurately describe reality. He's not saying something to effectuate an outcome. He's not saying it to help or to hurt. He's just saying it is. He's saying this is the case. This is not helpful. And those that want to effectuate an outcome are like, no, it's almost like the LeVar Ball strategy of media. Speak it into existence. Yeah, no, it's always going great, and always say it's going great, and therefore it will go great. And I don't believe in the speaking into existence. I mean, I get positive mindset and positive visualization. And I even get that perception. Hey, I even get that perception can become reality, that you can warp people's minds that way. But I appreciate what Pool's doing there in trying to accurately describe what he thinks is reality. The thing about the left is they are always on the same page messaging-wise. The only time we've ever seen them off the same page messaging-wise was the tail end of Joe Biden. Like, there were still some hangers-on, like David Pakman, who came on this show. Oh, no, Joe's fine. He's not on any performance enhancers. He's solid. You had that, and then you had some people starting to go, this was even after the debate, where the debate was the big breaking point, where all of a sudden they all got on different pages messaging-wise, and some of them couldn't help but accurately describe reality. And then there was the ones that were holding out going, no, don't accurately describe reality because we want to speak it into existence that Joe is okay. Outside of that, they're pretty good at staying on the same page messaging-wise. I'll give you, the right may share a lot of philosophical and principled agreements, but they're not. There is no cohesive messaging unity.
Yeah, in some ways that works to an advantage. I think I've told you this, Rachel, this. I think what makes your weekend show probably the best show of any trio on television is you're very different than your two co-hosts. You might have the same end goal, but I think it makes it interesting that you guys arrive at conclusions in very different ways. You don't get that, say, on Morning Joe. They're all starting and ending at the exact same point.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what your next question is, but it strikes me that, like, you keep saying, like, how we're different. I don't know. My main thing is I think right now, America, forget conservatism, Republicans, it needs to have a positive vision. The compass has to be pointed towards achievement. Right. And right now, conservative media is too reactionary and negative. And what I mean by that is I have always respected and appreciated and gravitated towards inspiration like frontiersmen, pioneers, and entrepreneurs. And those people don't go about their life going, here's everything that's wrong with the world. They're not afraid of it. But their answer to what's wrong with the world is, and I'm going to create my vision of tomorrow that looks like X. And that was Ronald Reagan. That was Morning in America. And I think you have to have a sunnier, more positive. And it's not, the point isn't to be chicken, is it, to be an ostrich that sticks your head in the sand. Chicken Little says the sky is falling. The point isn't to, live in la la land. The point is, you need action. And in order for action, you've got to have a positive vision to know which way to effectuate action. And that's missing. It just feels like a little bit always like, dig your heels in, be negative, tell us what's wrong.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to the previous topic. What's interesting is while so many people say that they looked up to Rush and want to be like Rush, nobody's actually like Rush, because what made him so powerful, and he really was, that he would tell conservatives, I think mostly rightfully, yeah, all these institutions are against you, but we can still win this fight. And Bill O'Reilly had a lot of that in him as well. He would say, look, everybody's lying to you, but here's the truth, and you can still take back control of this country. That is completely missing from this era of conservative media. And I have a lot of friends in the industry, as do you. Not many of them very positive. They're pretty doom and gloom. And I think that some positivity is missing, because at the end of the day, this really is still our country, meaning the voters. We, at least in theory, decide who runs this country. We decide what corporations are powerful by what we buy and don't buy. It's not like we're defenseless. We're just made to feel like we're defenseless.
All right, what else do you have in the mailbag?
All right, this is a good one. This is from Brandon from Denver. He said, hey guys, Will and Bobby, me and my sons have been playing the new college football game religiously. They've never been into college football, but I think their interest in the new game will grow the popularity in college football among younger fans. What say you?
Yes. I mean, I'm seeing it in my own household. My 16-year-old is into college football 25. And I think it's not only inspired a little more interest in college football, but college in general for him. It's not that he doesn't want to go to college. He's just kind of, I don't know. He's one of these kids, he doesn't think about it all the time. Like, where do I want to go to college? What's the right place for me? But seeing this college football game is... yeah, I think it is influencing him. By the way, having just got done this weekend of hanging out with 100 Navy SEALs, I mean, it sets me back on that path of is college what you really want to do? Right. There's just, I had Eric Prince on the show, the founder of Blackwater, the private contracting business, yesterday on the Will Cain Show. And I was reading about Eric yesterday, and there was a quote or something about why he founded Blackwater, or what it was. He worked as an intern in the White House under George H.W. Bush. And he was like, there's nothing more depressing than walking the halls of HUD and HHS. You want to see Leviathan and a lack of action? Wow. And he was inspired because he needed action. I don't mean like adrenaline rush, to do something. This is like that messaging I was talking a minute ago, being around those guys like I was around this weekend, understanding this country needs action, understanding that a fulfilled life is actually action. I'm a little bit like, is college the answer for raising young men?
Yeah, to answer that question, I'm pretty down on the entire college idea, mostly because, and again, maybe where I grew up, but most of my friends that didn't go to college are doing very well, driving trucks, laying tile, farming, and they didn't have to go through all of the ills of a college education, whether it be dad or, end up working at some office where your skin color and gender decide your exact level of success. But at the same time, there is a maturing process of college that I think does stick with people because you have roommates, you have a community. And on a lighter note, back to college football, when you're out at a bar and somebody's like, hey, I went to U of M, I went to Ohio State, that's something they're proud of forever. They meet up with their friends every year to go back to a game. So I don't want to dismiss that impact of college, the sense of community that we all need.
Absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, I met a Navy SEAL that went to Pepperdine this weekend.
Oh, wow.
So he did his 4 years in college, and then he signed up. Yeah, I've played it. I played it. I smoked my son. He doesn't get it yet. He doesn't know how to execute plays.
I thought you were bad.
I've gotten better. I've learned. Throw it to your primary read.
You're gonna be an easy beat.
All right, one final question here, and this comes from Dan from Bloomington, Illinois. It's a long one, a pretty good one. He says, I thought Roseanne, is that what it is? Roseanne? Roseanne said it best that the Harris-Walz campaign isn't a presidential campaign, but an IQ test. The same people who fell for the COVID mandates, masking, the Ukraine war, Russia collusion, the Trump PP tapes are falling for the repackaging of the worst VP in U.S. history. Do we have any hope if people fall for this? Wow.
That's very well said.
It is.
The one thing that we can't account for in the way that everybody's falling for everything is the role of Donald Trump. I just don't know what the world looks like without Donald Trump. Yeah. I don't know after Donald Trump. People define themselves as pro or anti. They just do. And there's nothing that you can do. Like everything you just named. Do you think in the end, like masking. Masking was a proxy for Donald Trump. Was it not? You wore your mask if you were anti-Trump, right, and you didn't wear your mask if you were pro-Trump. Like we can do this across the board on all these things. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't have, but it definitely became signals and markers. And I don't think there's anything much deeper. And we know this because of the way the parties have flip-flopped positions on so many issues, including the war in general, right? That's a big one. As a reaction to how they feel about Trump. And I don't know what the world looks like without Trump. I don't think anti-J.D. Vance or pro-J.D. Vance, or I don't know if it had been Ron DeSantis, if it just flips, and the world defines itself along terms of pro and anti-Ron DeSantis. I just think we're gonna take the gravitational force of society out at some point. Meaning he's gonna die, or we're gonna move on as a society, and then we're gonna re-scramble the world again.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking here, reading this question. So why did Donald Trump win in 2016? I would argue, Will, that a very happy nation probably doesn't elect someone like Donald Trump. A nation that's really fed up with permanent Washington probably elects Donald Trump, right? A desperate nation. Chuck Todd had a column about this on Saturday. It was actually really well written. He goes, politics are not always that complicated. Usually, people decide, are they happy with the country or are they not? But this is what's throwing me off. Americans are not happy with the country. All polls say that, including a new YouGov poll. Yet, they're being sold in a way that Kamala is the answer to it. And maybe the idea is we weren't happy under Trump, so we just want someone new. One of my predictions that I'm really confident in going forward is we're going to see a lot more one-term presidents because Americans are so unhappy. They're always going to want change compared to decades ago. But I think that's what's happening here, is that Americans are unhappy and they believe that Kamala is something new. So what does that tell us? It's pretty loudly. They don't blame Kamala for what's happening now. They don't blame her for the Biden administration.
It doesn't matter. It's just not, it doesn't matter. It's not deep. Americans, especially Americans on the left, okay, they are unhappy. They do not like a lot about the country, but they like Donald Trump less. They will take any condition, including a deterioration of their own lives, over Donald Trump. They would support Joe Biden when he was basically almost a dead body, over Donald Trump. And if you press any of them, and I have friends on the left, like Kamala is a huge improvement over what they'll tell you they would support to defeat Donald Trump. They would They would take anything and anybody. You could put a dog on the ticket and they'd vote. A dog would probably be one of their favorites because everybody loves a dog. But, you know what I'm saying? They would take anything over Donald Trump, and they have illustrated to you that over and over and over. So, of course, Kamala is going to be a big improvement. Go ahead, Two-A-Days.
No, I was just with a bunch of liberal people over the weekend. They were saying the same thing. I was like, what do you think of Kamala? They're like, we don't care. Anyone but Trump. Doesn't matter. We hate him. Anybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter at all. They don't care. They don't have one positive thing to say about Kamala, but they do not have anything nice to say about Trump, and that's all that matters to them.
And if you said to them, what do you feel about inflation, though? Inflation, that's bad. They're like, yeah, it's not good.
Doesn't
not
matter.
Donald Trump.
Nope. Exactly.
Right. Doesn't matter.
Nope.
Not Donald Trump. What about the fact that we're on the brink of nuclear war? What if we're in nuclear war? There's a nuclear war. Doesn't matter. Not Donald Trump. That's what I have 100% confidence that would be the reaction.
Yeah, I just agree. I see it differently because it's not liberal voters that matter. It's the moderate voters that usually decide these elections. Here's what I mean. When Biden was trailing so badly in the polling, most of the numbers said it wasn't newfound support for Trump. It was that there were some moderates that would vote for Biden, otherwise said, we're not going to show up for voting. I believe we were on track for 55% voter turnout. The number is now at 62%, which would be a record. I think what's happening is moderate voters are very excited about the prospects of Kamala Harris. I think that's where it comes to them not liking the state of the country, where before they're like, well, we weren't happy under Trump, we aren't happy under Biden, we're just not going to vote.
Maybe. I don't know. Everyone says they're moderate. I don't know anyone or many people who are moderate on Donald Trump. Literally moderate. How do you feel about Donald Trump? Don't really have an opinion. You mean many people like that?
No, right. No, that's true. That's true. I don't know exactly when these polls say like independent.
But everybody tells you they're moderate.
Right.
Oh, I'm moderate. How do you feel about Donald Trump? I don't really care.
I'm a fiscal,
Never met that guy.
Fiscal conservative. That's all I am. Fiscally conservative.
All right. We're going to hang around one more time with Outkick's Bobby Burack as we're going to break down what would a debate be like between Vice President Kamala Harris and presidential candidate Kamala Harris next on The Will Cain Show.
I'm Charles Payne. Listen to my Unstoppable Prosperity podcast so I can get you making money right now. Whether stocks are hitting new all-time highs or in free fall mode, opportunities abound. So why are so many potential investors still sitting on the sidelines? In a new season of my podcast, I'm going to get you in the game. After 38 years on Wall Street, I'm ready to impart some lessons and get you invested in the greatest wealth-generating machine in history. Listen anytime, everywhere at foxbusinesspodcast.com or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
Streaming now on Fox Nation, a new season of Duck Family Treasure.
It's treasure time.
The Robertsons are back.
Duck hunt, treasure hunt, finally go.
Tell the ducks we coming.
For their biggest,
You gotta cut a squirrel in half.
beeping season ever.
Go big or go home.
All new episodes.
Looking at what we find doesn't tell the story.
One unforgettable season.
When you see how we find it, it'll ignite the engine.
My hands are shaking.
A new season of Duck Family Treasure. Streaming now on Fox Nation. Sign up at foxnation.com.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Listen to the all-new Bret Baier podcast featuring Common Ground, talking to lawmakers weekly from opposite sides of the political spectrum about the issues of the day and how Americans can find common ground in a politicized world.
That's just not happening on Capitol Hill. It takes leadership, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Along with all your Bret Baier favorites like the campaign, the candidates, the all-star panel, and much more. Available now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Danny Maldonado on YouTube says, the reason Kamala Harris doesn't list her policies on her website is so nothing is in writing and can change up or flip her policies as she caters to voters. It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and Fox News Facebook page. Always on demand by subscribing at Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. We're still hanging out with Outkick.com's Bobby Burack today here on the Will Cain Show. I said this weekend, Bobby, on Fox and Friends. right now, this enthusiasm, this honeymoon period for Kamala Harris is being buoyed by the idea that she never has to account for anything. She's faced no tough questions. She sat down for no interviews. I think she's going on 3 weeks now, something like 20 I don't know. We're getting close to 20 days, really, where she has been the presumptive nominee and nothing. No need to account for anything, including yet, she says she's going to this week, put out what her policies would be as president. So it's an entire campaign on vibes, just on vibes. Like, hey, feels good, looks good, baby. Let's do this. But if you really dig into who Kamala Harris is and what she said, she was the most liberal voting senator in the United States Senate. That's her voting record. Then when she was vice president, she was the tying vote, Bobby. I believe it's like a record-setting 33 times. And the votes that she single-handedly then made that swayed American policy did things like bring in the Inflation Reduction Act, which did the exact opposite, which increased inflation. And she's been pro and anti-fracking. She's been all over the place on crime. Kamala Harris, at some point, I would have to think, I don't think she can go 3 months without ever having to face the music on who exactly she is and how exactly she'd govern as president.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Like, back to that football coach analogy, that new coach, you can win the first couple of weeks with your base rallying behind you, but eventually you have to perform. At some point, Kamala Harris is going to have to step outside this honeymoon and actually talk about what she would do as a president and maybe, hopefully, answer for her many flaws previously. Yeah, it's such a bizarre thing, like not talking to the media. Also, what is she so afraid of? Like, you don't think if she sat down with George Stephanopoulos, he wouldn't butter her up and ask her some very advantageous questions? This makes me think that there are people advising her that know how unlikable she is, how kind of a clown she is, that they're telling her, hey, don't speak to anybody. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, that she is just not talking when the media has been so in her favor.
Well, it makes sense to me because it's going well. I mean, and all she has to do is, like, well, like if we're going to just kill the football analogy, run the clock out as long as you possibly can. And the media has her back. So why, I mean, when she gets to that point of having to interact with the media, then she'll sit down in a situation where it won't be adversarial. But there's no even need to do that for now because it's all working out well. Here's an example, I think, when it comes to policies and the way she's being covered by the media. This is fascinating. This is CBS News. Okay, this is on June 14th. Donald Trump puts out his plan on June 9th. No taxes on tips, right? CBS News runs a piece. Former President Trump vows to stop taxing tips, and it would cost the federal government up to $250 billion over 10 years, according to a nonpartisan watchdog group. That's how they approached his new policy proposal. Of course, she copies it very recently. Same location that he announced it, Las Vegas. And this is CBS News, August 12th. Vice President Kamala Harris is rolling out a new policy position saying she'll fight to end taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers. Same news organization, 2 months apart. Two different candidates, same policy.
Yeah. I just got thinking, if SNL were still funny, wouldn't that be an SNL segment to have Trump and Harris side by side saying the exact same thing and then having the media cover it differently? I just thought about that. I didn't see that from CBS.
Well, Jonathan Karl, we could show the one, Jonathan Karl, he's ABC, right? He sat down to interview J.D. Vance, and he's given J.D. Vance a hard time, like, she was never really border czar. If you rewind the clock, 1 year ago, there's Jonathan Karl talking about her as border czar in charge of the border.
Oh, yeah. I mean, remember Axios? They said that no serious outlet had ever used the term border czar. And people look back to a previous story from Axios calling her border czar. Yeah, I mean, these are not serious people at all. It's really brought out the worst of the media, honestly. All of this, like, from the fact that they hid Joe Biden's mental state, which people knew, the media knew, they refused to report on it, that they turned on him when they thought, not only is he bad for the country, but maybe he can't win the election, to seeing the way they prop up Harris as, I don't know, this female version of Obama with zero baggage. It's so dishonest. It's so predictable, but it certainly should leave even a blacker eye on the state of the press, where they're just openly lying to us and speaking to us like we're fools. And the saddest part is it might be working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She can't reconcile her policies against her past. You earlier in the show, you talked about that moment of high for Donald Trump after the assassination attempt, the RNC. Well, the DNC is next week, which will represent another week of like enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. And here's the tentative schedule for the DNC. President Biden speaks on Monday. Hillary Clinton will speak on Monday. Former President Barack Obama speaks on Tuesday. Former President Bill Clinton speaks on Wednesday. Tim Walz then on Wednesday, and Kamala Harris on Thursday. That is what they'll roll out next week. And we can all talk about, Biden. And Biden will be the low point of that. He will.
Yeah.
They put Biden and Clinton both on Monday. That'll be the low point. It'll only be up from there. That's Hillary Clinton. It'll only be up from there. But it's going to be another week of like buoyed enthusiasm for Kamala Harris with still no scrutiny.
Pelosi is not speaking as of now.
This is not every speaker that's going to speak.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi, by the way, is clearly the power behind the throne. You brought up Rachel Campos W. She thinks it's Barack Obama. She's always saying Barack. I don't think it is Obama. It is Nancy Pelosi. She is the most powerful person in the Democratic Party. She is pulling the strings behind the throne, behind the scenes. She also, by the way, can't complete a coherent sentence like Joe Biden. She's in her 80s. But she is never someone I think you would see necessarily front and center on the stage. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. But her power is behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was on Rachel's side, and I still do think Obama is very, very popular. I think the people who have the money listen to him. George Clooney, and we know once David Axelrod came out against Biden, things really started to move, which I think we predicted on this show. David Axelrod is probably the unofficial spokesman for Obama at this point. They're very, very tight, according to all reports. But yeah, Nancy Pelosi, by all accounts, is the one who really forced Joe Biden out. This right now is her party for whatever reason. It might be best for her not to speak, but continue to control this party kind of out of way and out of sight. I think that would be the best move for her. But you're right. I don't know that putting her front and center helps a lot, but I think a lot of Democrats would want to hear from her, because without her, I think Biden might still be the candidate right now.
Yeah, no doubt. She said you can go the hard way or the easy way. She got her way when it came to Joe Biden. All right, it's been a great conversation today with Outkick's Bobby Burack. You can check him out on Outkick. He's also on X. Keep up with all the columns that he is posting. An original thinker, independent thinker, and somebody I encourage you to follow. And we always appreciate having him here on the Will Cain Show. Thank you, Bobby.
Appreciate it, Will, anytime.
Okay, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same place. And until then, I will see you again next time.